Climate change is here and it's happening. We've seen severe climate events, record-breaking summer heat, the highest amount of rainfall in the shortest possible time, cyclones with very high intensity winds and flooding. In the mountains, in the countryside and in the big metro cities, there's been a cost to all of this. Mountains are falling, forests are catching fire, roads and houses are being washed away, and huge number of people and animals have been killed and are at risk. Now, in all of this, there's another aspect to this. Climate change is already proving to be a challenge for security. It does threaten military bases, and adverse climate also makes it harder for the military to do its job of protecting the nation. Now, this impact on military installations and assets also has a bearing on missions and operations of the military. So, in our show today, we're looking at what the new strategic challenges for the military are because of climate change, how military operations are affected, and what could be the possible impact on India, and how it's going to cost us in resources and readiness. Joining me to discuss this are Vice Admiral SK Jha, former Chief Hydrographer to the Government of India, and one of India's most respected environmentalists, Debi Goenka. And in the studio I have with me my colleague Deepak Bhadana. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show.
Good afternoon.
Debi, I want to start by asking you this. What prompted you to write this letter to Defence Minister Rajnath Singh asking for a climate change document for the Indian military? Why the Indian military?
Well, it actually started off with the Indian Navy because, as you know, I'm based in Mumbai, and we've been talking about the impact of sea level rise on the city itself. And as you know, the Indian Navy has very important establishments in and around Mumbai.
Yes.
And I realized that, and I mean, you know, and Admiral knows that getting assets for the Indian Navy is a very time-consuming and very expensive process. And also, I was reading about what the US Navy has been doing for many years to plan for the impact of climate change and sea level rise for their assets. And it struck me that I wasn't quite sure what the Indian Navy was doing to look at the future impact of climate change on their assets. And I had informal discussion with a few officers I know off the record and retired officers as well.
Right.
And they actually told me that some kind of informal discussions have taken place, but it has not really led to any kind of concrete action. So I thought it would be a good idea to draw the attention of our home defense minister to this issue.
Yes.
And see whether our defense forces can factor in climate change in the decision-making process when they're planning bases or upgrading existing bases or buying expensive naval assets, whether these things be factored in. That is what really prompted the letter to the Honorable Raksha Mantri.
Absolutely. And, Admiral Jha, since what Debi mentioned actually has a naval, bearing, and you've been, of course, Chief Hydrographer to the Government of India, and before that, you coordinated the operations during the tsunami of 2004. And today, nearly 20 years later, we're in the middle of, we're not talking of climate change down the road, but we're actually in the middle of climate change. We're experiencing it, literally on a daily basis. So this point that Debi made about, future-proofing, say, the Navy from climate change, what are the kind of measures you think the Indian Navy should be looking at, to anticipate the fallout of climate change?
Sandeep, thank you very much for calling me on your show. This is indeed a very, very relevant point. Looking at the way that climatic change is taking place, the way the sea level is rising, if we take the data for the past about 100 years, we'll see about 6 to 7 inches of sea level has risen there, which has affected the entire coastal belt of almost the entire world. Similarly, if you see the severity of the cyclones, the severity of the precipitation, the rain, all that has increased, and it has changed. In our lifetime, it has changed.
Yes.
It has changed manifold. I would probably divide this entire aspect into the two divisions. One would be the purely military aspect.
Right.
In that, we can look at the major installations which is being installed by the country and the Navy as such. That is one. The second is also a certain amount of operational the requirements will change. The coastal configuration have changed to a certain extent because of the severity of the cyclones.
Yes.
Another aspect which is important, that is because of the change in the temperature, the sea temperature had changed. Because
Right.
of that, the sound velocity changes in water, and because of that, the detection parameter changes
Yes.
in the water, which is very crucial for the submarine warfare.
Right.
Whilst all these are being continuously being monitored and taken into account,
Yes.
but one must understand, because of the rise in temperature, the seawater itself is expanding, so the volume is increasing. Therefore, it is occupying more amount of area. As far as I remember and I understand, all the major installations, when they are installed, uh, certain amount of these factors are taken into account. A buffer zone is created. The inundation maps are created so that suppose you are installing a nuclear
Yes.
power plant, then you definitely take into account, say, if there is a half a meter rise in sea level, water level will go up to which level, and
Yes.
therefore, where should we install it? So these factors are to a certain extent taken into account. But yes, what Mr. Devi is saying is absolutely right. This needs to be looked into very seriously.
Right.
Reason being that whatever had happened in the last about 100 years, and if you see the data from, say, 1990, 1992, 93, 95
Yes.
onwards, the changes are very, very rapid.
Right. Changes are very rapid.
And
And Debi, I'm going to ask you this because, since you wrote that letter to the RM, what is the kind of blueprint that the armed forces could be looking at, say the military, and specifically in this case, the Indian Navy, because you're talking about rising ocean levels, and as the Admiral mentioned that there are many other changes, of course, that have a bearing on the operations of the military. A very crucial aspect he mentioned was the fact that anti-submarine warfare itself would change. But give us an idea, because you've studied these patterns, you've studied these blueprints across the world. What is the kind of template or a blueprint that you would recommend that the Indian military could look at?
See, first of all, the rate of increase of sea level rise has been constantly underestimated by everybody. And we are finding that the rate of increase is accelerating day after day. So whatever assumptions were made earlier about sea level rise are probably gross underestimates. The current, my understanding is that probably the sea level rise will of 1 meter may happen over the next 30 to 40 years and
Right.
not over 100 years.
Yes.
That has been predicted. And there's also one very significant prediction which nobody even thinks about, that if all the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic melt, which is
Yes.
likely to happen much faster than we anticipated, the sea level rise may probably go up to even something like 60 meters, 60 meters,
Right.
which is an incredible figure, which has not even entered the mindset, I think, of 99.9999% of the population.
Yes. Yes,
So at
absolutely.
least
Yes.
not 60 meters, we should plan for 1 meter, is
Right.
my thinking. And the second thing I want to add is it's not just the sea level rise. For example, if you look at the rise in temperature on land, not the sea temperature, but the terrestrial temperature. Now, for example, we have the Army and the Air Force operating in desert-like conditions in Kutch, Rajasthan, Gujarat,
Yes.
and so on and so forth, where the ambient temperatures can go up to 45, 50 degrees Celsius, right?
Yes.
The question is, what kind of equipment will function or malfunction at those temperatures, right?
Yes.
Will an army Jawan be able to hold his rifle if
Yes.
the temperature around him is around 55 degrees centigrade?
Right.
The temperature, the heat of the barrel itself may make it too hot to hold, and
Right.
so on and so forth.
Yes.
So these are all important factors that I think the Defense Ministry needs to start looking at very, very seriously. Which is
Absolutely. Yes.
our appeal is to the Raksha Mantri. Please
Right.
consider all these things.
Please consider global warming, factor it into your military preparations, as environmentalist Debi Goenka just told us. But thank you very much for joining us on the 9 p.m. show, gentlemen. Debi Goenka and, of course, Vice Admiral SK Jha.